Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the No Trade Clause podcast. My name's Neil Gogna. I'll be your host for this episode. I'm here with my man Oliver as well from No Trade Clause, and we're happy to have on for the first time our guest here, Keon of Hoop Intellect. Keon, welcome, man.
I appreciate y'all for having me on. This is a pretty cool setup, at Summer League. So yeah.
Awesome, man. We're glad to have you on for the first time. So, Keon, for those who don't know you, who don't know Hoop Intellect, tell us, what do we need to know? Who are you? What is Hoop Intellect?
Yeah, so Hoop Intellect is basically my YouTube channel. Basically kind of revolves around the NBA draft and, some other basketball kind of topics. Do a lot of breakdowns and things of that nature, just covering the game. So that's kind of the main thing, really, on YouTube, so that's what it is, Hoop Intellect.
Awesome. How'd you get started?
Yeah, so about 2.5 years ago. Well, actually, I guess it's probably longer than that. I was in college at Oklahoma State. Shout out to Oklahoma State for that one. So basically, I was just trying to kind of figure out a way to get some of my thoughts off about basketball and everything, and kind of taught myself how to edit and use Photoshop a little bit better along the way. Started off doing a lot of highlights and kind of covering the players that didn't get as much shine. So we're talking like the Alex Caruso's, maybe a compilation of Jonathan Isaac's defense, or DeAndre Ayton's rookie season. Just kind of covering things like that as I continue to kind of grow and evolve in that way. And then over time, that kind of evolved into some things, because I was also writing about the NBA draft on Medium at the time. And then in 2020, spring of 2020, somewhere in there, I decided to kind of put those things onto the YouTube and started doing the draft breakdowns and really getting that format off. And that exploded in a way I never saw coming, and I kind of just ran with it from there. So just tried to get better every day and every video, and that's really the very short version of how I kind of got started.
Yeah.
So,
I actually got a few questions about your process.
Sure.
Your growth has been tremendous. How has that looked? Have you implemented any sort of strategies to get new eyeballs on your content, or is it just the quality of the content just keeps attracting more and more people?
Yeah, so in the beginning, that was one of my more main focuses, is on trying to figure out what people wanted and everything, the thumbnails and all that kind of stuff. But really the focus afterwards, and after that started to gain some traction, was just to kind of get better as a scout and as an overall basketball viewer and analyst. And then also that kind of leads into making the content as good and concise and clear as possible. So those are kind of the main things that I've focused on, since then.
And how deep do you go with the prospects? Do you look at top 10, top 30, top 60?
Yeah, so I'm really covering everybody. Back in 2020, it was the pandemic, so we had a lot of time. I was able to get to some absurd number, 68 prospects or something like that, do a breakdown on all of them. Now it's kind of scaled back a little more to the more of the first round in terms of the deep breakdowns. But overall, I'm doing big boards, mock drafts, telling information and bits and pieces about all 60 plus 80, all the way down to 100 prospects. So it's really basically everybody.
Mm-hmm. And considering your growth, now you're at such a pretty high level, large scale operation. Do you see a future continuing this, or what are your goals? Do you ultimately want to transition on to the team side, or it seems like you have a lot of options as to how to leverage this platform. What are your ambitions with it, I guess?
Yeah, I would love to get the opportunity to work with the team directly at some point. But right now my main focus is just on kind of getting better personally and trying to be as good as possible, because along the way I've noticed you really don't know what you until you know. There's some saying out there. It's until you know what you don't know, or whatever, or something like that. But
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I've just noticed I just have so much room to still grow, and even though I felt like I had a pretty good base in terms of basketball knowledge and things of that nature. It's just something I've been focusing on at this point. So, all kinds of different options, and then whatever comes my way, I'll definitely consider it. But my end goal, hopefully, would be to work with a team or something in that way.
Awesome, man.
Awesome, man. Keep it up. We love the content. I think a lot of people are enjoying the content as well. So there's obviously a market out there for that. Oliver, I know you had some questions about some of the big names in the draft.
Yeah, I was just curious, you know, if you've had a chance to see some of the games so far. Like, we've had a lot of the headline guys at least get the first few games in. You know, we're starting to see a few of them drop off now. You know, rest, you know, a tweaked something here and there. They got to sit out for the rest of the summer league. For like the top 5 guys in the draft, how have you seen them like finally being in an NBA uniform? Like, what stood out to you among the cream of the crop of this draft?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's always really exciting to get to finally see these guys in an NBA setting and everything. Of course, Paolo Banchero being the #1 pick, he's definitely stood out. Just, you know, seeing him in person, just how big he is and the ways that he's able to get to his spots, you know, shot creation, his passing has really popped in the the 2 games that he did play since he got shut down. So, you know, there's been a lot to like with him. Obviously, the turnovers in that second game were, you want that to scale back a little bit, but just kind of taking the risk and making plays. I've loved to see what he's done, especially defensively also, because, you know, that's been something that's been highly criticized to him. You know, that he had that game-saving block that eventually got overturned. But, you know, a lot of great things to see from him. And then you've got Chet Holmgren, who started off really well in Utah. Hasn't been quite that level. Kind of the expectations definitely rose after he did what he did there. But I think that he's been, you know, pretty impactful on both ends for sure. Kind of just trying to find his way offensively, especially. And then Jabari Smith, I think he's been really good defensively the entire time. Offensively, he's been put in a little bit of a peculiar situation. Coming in, you guys know that he wasn't really the guy who's going to go create shots for himself. You know, handle still needs some work. It's not really going to change in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
So, you know, those are some things that he's going to have to work through and work on. The shot hasn't really been falling, but defensively, just being able to make an impact in multiple ways on the floor, that's been great to see from him. You've got Keegan Murray, who's been, you know, just as solid as they come, just production across the board. You look up, all of a sudden, he's got 17 points, 9 rebounds, and it's like, I didn't even notice that.
Quiet 17.
Right. He's somebody who's going to just make an impact with whoever he's out there with. I think that's going to immediately translate, so that's been good to see for sure. And then, you know, Jaden Ivy at #5, it sucks to see him, you know, get injured in the way that he did, because he was off to a great start in that game for sure. But, you know, he really popped in terms of his explosiveness, that first step, just being able to make plays and get to certain spots that other players just aren't able to in the way that he can. So it's been great to see everybody. But, yeah, those top 5 guys have certainly all made an impact in their own ways.
For sure. It's awesome to see him. A question for you, that top 3, obviously, you know, people were pretty surprised that Paulo went first. I think the Vegas line shifted about 24 hours before, so people were catching on to what was going to happen. What did you think? How did you have that top 3 if you were to rank them?
Yeah, so it actually went the way that I ranked them. I have Paulo #1, Chet #2, and Jabari Smith #3. Now, for a long time, we all kind of thought it seemed like Jabari was going to be that #1 guy, and then Paulo would go #3 to the Rockets. But that shifted on draft night. It seemed like Jabari himself was pretty surprised at what happened. So, but that was kind of the top 3 that I had on draft night. So.
Now, do you think that was the plan all along for Orlando, or do you think things may have shifted last minute?
I honestly don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but it just seems kind of weird to curve Jabari in that way if that was kind of the plan all along. But, you know, you never know. Some teams get a little bit, you know, crafty or unique with their sort of strategy. So I'm not completely sure.
One interesting observation from it is we rarely see these like covert operations. You know, the age of social media and things. It's, you know, it's very difficult to like run such a tight ship where no one has any idea what you're doing in the draft. However, John Hammond in Orlando was the one who took Giannis as like the secret of that draft late in the lottery, I believe. So it seems like he's got some experience running a tight ship and making sure everyone, you know, checks their corners. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the plan all along.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a great one, because I think they had everybody fooled. So I think their plan worked in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
And then what are your thoughts on Keegan Murray? Obviously, you talked a little bit about that. Do you think that was the right pick for Sacramento? And how good do you think he can be?
Yeah, so I thought Jaden Ivy was the best player, but there are so many different things going on for their organization. You know, you've got the whole Tyrese Halliburton thing. You picked, you know, Davion Mitchell in the lottery last year. De'Aaron Fox is there, the kind of fit with those two, and you still got Davion there trying to figure out how to work those three guards around Sabonis is just not as easy as taking somebody like Keegan Murray, even if, you know, my opinion is that he doesn't have quite the ceiling that Jaden Ivy does. But I think, you know, in this Sacramento situation, like I kind of mentioned before, I think that he's just somebody who's going to go out and produce. He doesn't need a bunch of touches. He's shown himself to be a really high-level shooter, being able to defend a few different positions, and just somebody that can really fit in and contribute from the jump. Now, I think what remains to be seen is just how good he can actually become. You know, he's a little bit older, a bit of a late bloomer, so that's, you know, TBD still, but I think that he can be a really high-level player and contributor for them for a very long time. And with some of the other moves that they've made this offseason, I kind of like the direction that Sacramento's going in. So I'm excited to see what they bring next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I heard someone on another podcast today saying that they think that Sacramento could be a sleeper playoff team. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. Who's your pick? Your early pick for Rookie of the Year?
Early pick for Rookie of the Year, I think I'd probably go with Paolo. I just think that, obviously, I think that he's the best player, and also just kind of that situation, just being in there with some of those other, you know, young guys, being able to get those touches and use him in the right ways. I think he has a really good chance, but you can make a case for a lot of different guys, even, you know, Keegan Murray just being able to kind of produce and get in there from the jump. That could be one as well, but I will go with Paolo.
Awesome. Okay, so outside of the headliners, outside of the top five, give us some sleepers that have caught your eye so far.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite guys so far in Summer League this year is Keon Ellis, also on the Kings. You know, actually somebody who I thought, you know, should have been drafted and even considered it a little bit higher. But just some of the things that he's been able to do, just knocking down shots from three. He actually hit that big one off the glass in that crazy game against Orlando. I think that was one of the best that we've seen. But yeah, just being able to do a number of different things out on the wing and defend. I think that he's been really impressive, especially relative to where, you know, where he went, obviously. And then Jabari Walker with Portland, I think that he's actually earned himself some more minutes in this setting. I think he's been super productive in what he's done, being able to defend multiple positions at a very high level. One of the most impressive, in my opinion, that we've seen this entire time. So, and then obviously, you know, finding his way offensively in a number of different ways, you know, knocking down a couple threes and scoring inside. So those would be two. One that's not in this actual rookie class would be A.J. Lawson. Playing with Dallas. I don't know what's going on in their game right now. Last I checked, it was a pretty lopsided score. But, you know, the previous games, he was really impressive, knocking down threes at a really high rate, just being active all over the floor and kind of showing that he's, you know, ready to potentially make a team and potentially be one of their, you know, back-end rotation kind of guys. So those would be some of my sleepers so far.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I could go down Denver's whole Summer League roster, like, you know, with Gillespie, Peyton Watson, Kamagate, like, and I watched their game against Cleveland, and they were just like a well-oiled machine, man. Those, considering, you know, Summer League is a tough setting to get all these guys coming from different places, different organizations, get them together and like put a few basic sets together and get everyone on the same page. Like, it's not an easy thing to do in such a short period of time. And it's been super fun to watch them so far. You know, Kamagate is getting all these alley-oops and everything, and it's just, they've been really fun to watch. And I think each of those guys, especially Peyton Watson, right, had, how many minutes did he average at UCLA? Like,
I think it was 12.
Yeah.
12.
Like, he's got a lot to show in a setting like this, and it's been fun to kind of track his progress, and obviously people will be sure to keep tabs on him moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely enjoy watching that Denver team, especially for him specifically. Just, I think he averaged 3.3 points per game last year. It was kind of a weird year coming in as a highly touted prospect. So, you know, watching his develop, kind of the ups and the downs of both of the games that they played in has been really fun to watch.
Definitely. So we, you know, we talked about a lot of these guys who have been, they've come to Summer League through a bunch of different ways, right? They went undrafted. They're here. We're talking about lottery guys, but they all kind of went through the same overarching draft process, right? You know, starting with, you know, your college season wraps up or your international season wraps up, then you got to declare and you got to meet deadlines, and then, you know, you go to the combine, you start working out with teams, go through interviews. It's a long process, and it's probably the most grueling interview process that anyone ever has to go through, like, in their lives. What about the process do you like, do you value as an analyst that these players go through, and what do you want to see changed about the process?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that I always like the combine. I think that it's, fun, at least the scrimmages part of it, just being able to see guys out there in a setting where it's like just kind of go and figure it out. There's some guys who are going to take many different approaches, even when we see like out here in Summer League, just being able to make that extra pass or, keying in on certain rotations and being in the right spot and help defense with teammates that you've never played with before. Those are kind of things that I like to look at for certain prospects. But you are right. It is just a really grueling process, and like the workouts, you might have somebody, if they have a wide draft range, go to 15 teams within a month, and even the week before the draft, they might, hit up 3 teams and have to work out with them. So I'm not really sure. I haven't really thought about it long and hard. I'd be interested to hear what some of your ideas are on it, about how you could kind of fix it or change it in a certain way. But just somehow shortening the load that they kind of have, because that's a lot of pressure to be able to go in there and perform at a high level over and over and over again for different teams, because you're just trying to find a spot in some way. So don't have the answers, but that'd be kind of my direction.
Yeah, 2 things, because you're not the first person I've asked this question to. We've had other draft shows, and I like asking different people because there's so much about the draft process that I like to put under a microscope, because it's like the way that they kind of funnel players through it all, I find super interesting. And 2 of the most common things revolves around the combine. First and foremost is finding a way to get as many players to actually participate in the combine and play in the combine, because it's become sort of a chess match between agents and teams, whether or not the player wants to actually play in the games, what information are we withholding, what teams are we meeting with. It's become like a very strategic part of the draft process. And at the end of the day, we are missing out on a lot of information by certain guys not participating in it. So I guess from an outsider's perspective, we obviously want to see, even though it may not technically, strategically be in the player's best interest, we want to see as many of these guys on the floor as possible.
Yeah, I 100%, I get it from both sides, with the agents trying to protect their prospect and their stock and everything, because, things could certainly fluctuate if they have a bad performance and their stock is pretty high. I think that all that comes out in the wash in the end. But you look at a guy like Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, like if he doesn't, play in the combine, who knows where he ends up going? He ends up going in the lottery and becomes this kind of giant, rapid rise that we, don't see super often. And he's out there performing in a lot of different ways. But that's the benefit of that stage for a guy like him, and playing both days too, even after having a great performance on the first day, is just kind of that's the point of that sort of process, and being able to see even more people, kind of like we used to years before it kind of became this. It's something I would like to see return, so that's kind of my favorite part of it, definitely.
So Oliver was kind of mentioning or touched on the whole like lack of information when these players withdraw from these workouts. Are there any players that come to mind for you that you, in previous drafts, where you thought this player is going to be amazing, and then they didn't pan out that way, or vice versa? Someone that you thought, I don't know if this one's going to be great, and then you were surprised that, oh yeah, they exceeded your expectations.
Yeah, so on the spot, I'm really trying to think really rapidly right now. So I think Sharif Cooper, he's kind of had his struggles at Summer League so far. I was really high on him. I thought he was, pretty electric at Auburn, just with his ability to kind of make plays for everybody, put pressure on the rim. His first step, getting by guys, that has not been the same, and it's been sort of a struggle for a guy his size, of course, and then being able to kind of find the relationship between, being on ball, and that's his like kind of his biggest strength. That's where you unlock his biggest strength. But also in the league, there's guys who do that even better. You've got Trae Young on teams. So that would be one guy, and that I was, pretty high on that hasn't panned out in that way. I'm trying to think because I haven't really done it in this scale for long enough to kind of think about it. But
it's all right if you don't got anyone. That means, you know what that means? That means you're right more than you're wrong. So
yeah, I feel like that's pretty,
You're forgetting about your misses, and that works then.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll ask this then, because I think this is kind of going to lead us to the next question anyway. How do you evaluate players where you don't have as much information on or video footage? A player like Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah, for sure. That is a very difficult one. Being able to really dig into his situation, learning things about his background and kind of his evolution as a player. Those are some of the things that I kind of looked for and focused on with him, and also just what he did show in the EYBL last year, and some of his strengths and weaknesses, some of the players that he's going up against, the situation that he's in, what is his role on the team, who are some of the other guys that he's surrounded with, just kind of putting all these different factors into his sort of evaluation in a way that we don't necessarily always do on players at that level, on AAU circuits and things of that nature. So those are some of the things that I kind of put into him, and then also just kind of focusing on the areas of his game that he excels at. So obviously his athleticism vertically and his shot creation, some of his form as a shooter, and then kind of trying to project some of those things going forward. But from an outsider kind of perspective, without having him in a workout and without getting to interview him or know about his work ethic, that's just kind of what you have to go off of. But yeah, those are kind of the things that I focus on.
So for Shaedon Sharpe, did you like that pick for Portland? Especially considering that they're more in a win now mode, and they got this guy that people don't necessarily think maybe he's going to need a little bit more time to become a solid contributor.
I thought it was kind of an interesting pick, especially with them making the Jeremy Grant trade and everything, just saying win now. I felt that they could have gone in a direction like a Dyson Daniels and getting another guy in there who can play off a Dame, really defend on the wing, and make plays, with and without the ball, and would be more of a sort of instant contributor. But you also got to look at the other way where you got Dame there. You have Anthony Simons to kind of, pour into him, and we really still haven't. He's still a mystery because he gets hurt in his first summer league game. Of course, that was just so unfortunate. But yeah, I probably would have went in a different direction, but I don't necessarily mind it, just given his sort of talent, and they might still be able to win now, and also have a guy kind of in their back pocket being able to develop and take him along slowly, be patient with him, and get to learn from some really talented guys in front of him. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another guy in a similar situation in terms of just being in a weird spot in terms of intel gathering and information is Pat Baldwin, and he got picked up by Golden State. So, you have two rookies who their draft process was irregular, different situations from other guys. How do you see them breaking into their respective rotations into two teams that are trying to win as many games as possible? What do they need to hone in on from day one being in that facility to really have an impact early?
Yeah, so for Shaedon, I think a lot of that is going to come defensively, right? Mm-hmm. So what we saw from him in the EYBL, it's really hard to sort of put a strong evaluation on because there's so many different factors going on. And everything like that. So for him, it's going to be what do you bring to the table defensively, especially alongside guys like Dame and Anthony Simons, who that's not their forte, of course. So that'd be a main focus for him. And then Patrick Bowen is really just kind of being able to be a knockdown shooter. We've seen that from him in the past, but last year there was a lot of struggles, a lot of different things going on from the injuries and, outside issues and things going on. So for him to focus on. So I think, those two things for him being a shooter and then him defensively as well. But he's kind of in a different situation with that Warriors team that has more of a defensive structure. And you've got a guy like Draymond Green. You've got Klay Thompson. You've got all these things going on there. And they've been one of the best defenses every time that they're healthy. So I'm a little bit less concerned about that for him. But just kind of being a knockdown shooter and finding his spots and really just getting acclimated, because we also haven't seen him out on the court either. So, just learning the ways of the game, the pace of the game, the speed of the game. So those couple things.
So, last question on Golden State before we shift gears a little bit here. Obviously, they're not rookies anymore, but what have you seen and what are you expecting this season from players like Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody? Obviously, Golden State has a pretty strong young core.
Yeah, so I was really high on Moody, coming into the draft last year. I really like his game and the direction they're moving, letting guys like Gary Payton II go. A few others as well, Damian Lee.
Otto Porter, yeah.
Right, those guys are going to have to kind of slide in there and be, major contributors for their team next year, and I think that they're confident in them doing that. So for Moody, it's kind of just that natural 3-and-D. He's got really great feel. You've seen it out there, just his ability to make things happen and score the ball, get to the free throw line. Just affect the game in multiple ways. And then Jonathan Kuminga being that kind of athlete and still working as a shooter, being able to get to his spots and be a little bit more consistent with the ball in his hands and also just make that impact defensively. So I think those two guys, first and foremost, have the easiest road to kind of contribute in this. I'm really curious to see what they do with Wiseman. Kevon Looney is such a great fit in there. Not that he does anything spectacular, but just what they like to do, even just ball reversals and everything, setting screens, knowing where and when to roll to the basket and with some of their split action and being in the right spots. He's really good at that. And then Wiseman, there's been some struggles in the past with his, hands and just kind of getting to certain spots on the floor and finding somewhere that he's most comfortable, because he's, a little bit different than some of the other bigs that they've had in the past. But, for him, I'm just curious to see how far along he is defensively, in pick and roll coverage. And because even in summer league so far, we haven't seen him in like a ton of minutes. I'm really just looking for him to be healthy first and foremost, and then we'll go from there and kind of see how far along he is in certain aspects of his game, because it's just been such a long time since we've really seen him out there.
Gotcha. So to shift gears a little bit, we like to think of summer league as kind of just like tying the bow on like this current draft class. So have you already started doing work on 2023, and what are your just initial thoughts on 2023 so far?
Yeah, so I like to do a lot of work kind of as the 2022 draft was kind of going on. So I do have quite a bit of already info and things on this upcoming class in 2023. I will actually be releasing a 2023 board, a way too early board, in the coming weeks or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot to like about this next class. A lot of unique players. Obviously, at the top of that, we've got Victor Womenyama, one of the most unique prospects, one of the best prospects that we've seen. Really ever, to be honest with you. And then you've got other guys in there too. Scoot Henderson with the G League Ignite has shown a lot of things in the past. We've got the Thompson twins overtime, Cam Whitmore going to Villanova, Derek Whitehead at Duke. A lot of different players. Keller Ware going to Oregon.
Can't forget Derek Lively, man.
Derek Lively going to Duke as well. Nick Smith. Arkansas is going to be a very good team to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Smith. You've got Jordan Walsh. You've got Anthony Black, all NBA prospects as well. So there's a lot to like about this upcoming class. I'm excited to kind of really dive into it a little bit more and get to see them play next year in college. But I think it's going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited because I think this could be the first class that we've seen where a lot of the lottery, maybe even like half the lottery, are guys that did not come up through NCAA, right? Like that, I think that's super interesting, and it's a first like true sign that like times are changing.
Yeah, I think that's like been the signature of the last, like 3 drafts. It's kind of just been this evolution of, first we get the Ignite guys, Jalen Green, Jonathan Kuminga, and then now we get even the overtime guys this year who that didn't really work out. But then you've got, more of that. We have all these non-traditional routes, and we kind of get to see like where the game is changing and where it's going, especially, with the draft. So I'm excited to see it, and then, projecting even forward, like how do these guys actually perform in the league from these different paths and kind of getting more of a bigger reference point, a broader reference point for things that aren't just, SEC, ACC, having that kind of background before. So I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, man, me too.
Awesome. And I don't think this player is in this coming draft class. I think it's the one after. But Bronny Jr., what are your thoughts on him? Have you had any opportunities to watch him? Do you think he's an NBA level player?
Yeah, I've been able to watch him, about 3-4 times, handful of times. I think that he has NBA level potential. He's a great athlete, really nice shooter, somebody who makes a big impact defensively in a way that I think really translate across levels. Solid passer as well, good feel for the game. So, he's not the guy who's going to, give you 30 every night in a way that's really flashy and really pops on social media these days, but he is somebody who makes a great impact on winning. And depending on the situation that he goes into, before going into the NBA, I think that that's going to be key in his eventual draft stock. But I do think that he's an NBA caliber type of player, even for his age going into his senior year. So yeah, he's somebody definitely to watch, and it's not just this gimmick or something for him being, LeBron's son. I do think that he has serious NBA potential.
Awesome. That's pretty exciting. Well, Keandre, thank you so much for the time today, man, stopping by here. We really appreciate it. Why don't you tell everyone who doesn't know where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on YouTube at Hoop Intellect. You can also find me on Twitter, on Instagram, do some posts on there as well. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for having me. It's been fun. This is really dope being here at Summer League and doing all this in this little studio over here. So yeah, I appreciate you guys for sure.
Awesome, man. Thank you for stopping by. For those of you who aren't familiar with his work, check out his Twitter, check out his YouTube. He's got great content, and hopefully this isn't the last time that we have Keandre on our podcast. Thanks, everybody.